might be fun to do a video where I talk about my top favorite true crime documentaries that you can watch online. The reason I chose to title it online and not just on Netflix is because I believe at least one of these is no longer on Netflix, but you can find it on Hulu. So for the most part, all of these are on Netflix in the US. I believe most of these may be like Netflix originals, so you might be able to find them no matter where in the world you are. But just as an FYI, I am American, so these are on at least the US Netflix and Hulu, and I will tell you when I get to the one that's on Hulu. So we will go ahead and get started. I'm gonna start from least to like most favorite, as usual. So and I just have like 8 of these. So the first one is Making a Murder. I'm sure most of you have heard of this. If you haven't not, what rock have you been living under? I'm just gonna go ahead and read off kind of the description for these as well. So, for Making a Murder, it is exonerated after spending nearly 2 decades in prison for a crime that he did not commit. Stephen Avery filed suit against Montowick, I believe that's how it's pronounced, County, Wisconsin, and several individuals involved with his arrest. Shortly after, however, Avery found himself behind bars again, this time accused of murdering a 25-year-old woman. So that one's a really good one. Highly suggest it if you haven't seen it. I do believe that they are actually going to continue and do like a season 2, but with someone different. That's just rumors that I've heard. I don't know how solid that information is, but it's just a rumor that I heard. Okay, and then the next one, number 7, is Who Took Johnny? This one I just watched a couple days ago, and it is really good. An investigation of a cold case tries to determine what became of Iowa paperboy Johnny Gosch, who disappeared 30 years earlier. So if you guys haven't heard of Johnny Gosch, basically he was a like 13 or 14-year-old, somewhere in there, paperboy from Wisconsin who was kidnapped and unfortunately still to this day has not been found. His case and the case of another boy in the same town a couple of years later who went missing under the same circumstances basically put into route the current laws that we have today for finding missing children. At the time, police were required to wait, I think it was 72 hours before actually starting an investigation, whereas now, if a minor goes missing, they are required to start the investigation immediately, which is so important. Like, the fact that like, they could wait 72 hours, and this was in, like, the 80s, is just crazy to me. And it also started the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. So the case is fairly well known. It's a pretty big deal. Started a lot of the rules that we have now for missing children. So that one, I highly suggest it if you have not seen it. And then, sorry, getting messing with my necklace. And then number 6 is Elaine, Life and Death of a Serial Killer. So I'm pretty sure most of you probably know who Elaine is. She is one of the most famous female serial killers, and there's a few different documentaries about her on Netflix. I know there's at least 2. I don't know as though I've seen the other one, but I know that I have seen this one, and I highly suggest it. A cameraman actually sits down and interviewed her, and it's British documentarian Nick Broomfield creates a follow-up piece to his 92 documentary of the serial killer. A highway prostitute who was convicted of killing 6 men in Florida between 1989 and 1980. So yeah, basically he actually sat down and interviewed her and talked about everything that happened, and the original documentary that he did with her in 1992 is also available on Netflix as well. I'm not going to talk too much more about that one because I'm pretty sure most people know what I'm talking about, or have heard of her. So number 5 is Inside the Mind of a Serial Killer. This one I really enjoyed. Now, this one is more in the TV show type style. It has different episodes. It's not all focused on one person, but there are about 10 episodes in, unfortunately, just one season, at least available on Netflix. But what I really liked about this one is the fact that they interview actual serial killers facing life or death row in prison, kind of try to get inside the mind of them, and kind of, you know, break down what happened, why they committed the murders that they did, and it is pretty chilling, but I really like it, really enjoyed this one, highly suggest that you check this one out as well. Okay, and then number 4 is the Central Park 5. Should I make this one 5? Anyway. Filmmakers Ken Barnes, Sarah Barnes, and David McMahon, I think is how you say his last name, examined a 1989 case of 5 teenagers who were wrongly convicted of raping a woman. After they had spent 6 to 13 years in prison, a serial rapist confessed to the crime. If you guys haven't heard about the Central Park 5, I highly suggest that you check this one out. I basically suggest that you check all these out. I don't know why I keep saying that. It's a good segue, I suppose. But yeah. Check it out. Very good. Number 3 is Amanda Knox. Now, I have watched a few different documentaries about this case. I find it very interesting and kind of fascinating. If you have not heard about this case, Amanda Knox is a 2016 American documentary film about Amanda Knox, twice convicted and later acquitted of the 2007 murder of Meredith Kercher, directed by Rod Blackhurst and Brian again. So if you have not heard about this case, a little bit more detail into this one. I've watched a few different documentaries about this one. There's some on YouTube, and I believe other ones just online, probably on Netflix as well. But this one I really enjoyed. It is a Netflix original documentary. They interviewed a few different people involved in the case. They actually interviewed Amanda, her boyfriend who was also convicted. They interviewed the prosecutor and the defense attorney, and as well as one of the top journalists that was reporting on this at the time. So Amanda Knox and her boyfriend were convicted, as I said, twice convicted of the murder of a young woman. Amanda was an American who was living in Italy for an exchange program. She was going to school there, met her boyfriend there who lived in Italy, and she had a English roommate, British roommate, who was found murdered, and Amanda and her boyfriend were convicted of the crime. And it's a very interesting story. I have mixed feelings about it. I'm not sure if she is guilty or not, but I definitely think that it's very interesting, and they talk about it a lot in this, the fact that the kind of press, really went at Amanda. This was the time where kind of, there was kind of the beginning of social media. They had like MySpaces, and they dug into like their MySpace profiles and, used particular photos against her, used the fact that she was in a sexual relationship outside of marriage, like, against her, and kind of portrayed her as like this horrible person who had like no emotion about her roommate's death, and kind of the police just latched onto her and didn't really go into looking for any other suspects. They just basically just attached onto her and believed that she committed the crime. Again, I'm not sure how I feel, whether or not she's guilty or not, but I do definitely think it's a very interesting story. Highly suggest this one. I'm gonna just say that at the end of all of them, but it's definitely one of those that I really enjoy kind of watching different documentaries about. Like I said, I've watched so many different ones about it, and I just find it very interesting. So number 2 is Crosby. Crosby is a 2009 American documentary film written and directed by Joshua Zesman and Barbara. I'm not even going to try to pronounce her last name, but here, the film initially begins as an examination of Crosby, a boogeyman-like figure from New York City urban legend, before swaying into the story of Andre Rand, a convicted child kidnapper from State Island. So I'm not going to go too further into detail other than that, because you just don't want to give away really anything, but it's basically like the perfect explanation of it. It's one of those that digs into the kind of true story behind an urban legend. Sort of. It's kind of figuring out if this urban legend of this town is at all directly connected to this real life killer, and if he could possibly be the kidnapper killer behind these urban legends. It's, again, really, really great one. And then number 1, this is the one that is no longer available on Netflix, at least in the US, but it is still on Hulu, which is great. This one is actually done by the same people that did Crosby. I talked about this a little bit in last week's video where I talked about local crime events. If you haven't checked that out, in the description, as always, that's anything that I talk about. Killer Legends is a 2014 American documentary written and directed by the same people that do Crosby. They investigate the real-life origins of several urban legends. One of the more popular ones that they talk about in this is the one that the movie The Town That Dreaded Sundown is actually based on, and it goes into details about those crimes, and many other urban legends, including one right here where I currently live, which again I talked about in that video, so I would definitely check that one out as well, my video, and Killer Legends. Again, this is the one that is on Hulu, not on Netflix, unfortunately. Maybe someday they'll bring it back. It was for a while. But yeah, that is my list of my top current favorite crime documentaries on Netflix. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this. If you did, please do give it a big old thumbs up. Make sure to hit that subscribe button for more horror related content, and I will be back next week with another video. Thanks so much for watching.